You think you know something about the world? Listen to this man. He's Professor of International Health at Karolinska Institute. He challenges our prejudices and view of the world.
Now, when I start to talk about this and I say there's 10 million deaths of children in the world, most people say, oh, it's terrible, you know. Don't even count it, you know. If 1 million children die or 10 million, it's still terrible. So I get this comment, oh, children just die and the aid doesn't reach them. Why should we help them when children continue to die in that amount? But you have to count this. You have to look into numbers, really. And here is another way of looking at this graph. Here is the income, how many dollars per year they earn. And the bubble now symbolized the number of children born. It was 100 million children born in 1959. That is the year when AIDS started in the world. So I started here. And here we have the child death. Few children dying, many children dying. So here it's bad health there, good health in this direction. And look how it was in 1959. 150 dying out of 1,000 born, mean 15% of children died before starting school. And they earned $3,000. But of course, the world was very unequal. I split it into country bubbles. And I zoom it in here so you can see the developing countries and the industrialized, the developed or industrialized countries. And at that time, many people said, oh, these countries will never come down into our circle here. Because this is with good income here and low child mortality. And they were all, we considered, you know, this was Asia, this was Arab countries, Latin America, Africa, everything was considered developing. But look what has happened. Look what's happened. Economy has grown. Those countries grow so rich, they left that circles. And others are coming into the industrialized circle. Look at China, just in the middle of the circle here, and now almost getting out on the other side. So in the area which we used to call industrialized countries is now full of the countries which we used to call developing. So it doesn't make sense any longer. And some blue countries are all the way down here. This is Singapore. This is Korea. These are other Asian countries, you know. But some is still up here. And this is Congo in civil war. So the distance between the richest and the poorest is wider than ever. Whereas the division in two groups has disappeared. And most people live here somewhere in the middle. And these are really industrialized countries now. Go home and turn around all the stuff you have and read what says on the bottom. Made in China. So really, that's where we are. And how do we measure this speed? This is the Millennium Development Goal number 4. I like these United Nations goals. Problem with some goals is that we don't have good measurements. But for child mortality, we have good measurements. And the aim is to decrease it with 2/3 in 25 years, one generation, starting 1990. And this means reducing with 4.3% per year. We who like calculating deaths, a few people who like calculating deaths, but I am one of them, you know. And we want to measure this in the same way as the economists measure economic growth. They say this country had an economic growth of so many percent per year. So we would like to say this country has a social improvement by decreasing child mortality with so many percent. So then you can understand this percent, you know. It's called average annual rate of reduction. You will see this AARR is a new way of measuring. And I start by measuring Sweden. I fly Sweden back in history. I fly it 100 years back in history to 1900. And I'm going to test Sweden against Bangladesh. It's going to be a race between Bangladesh, because Bangladesh in 1990 had this child mortality the same as Sweden has 1900. And which one will win? Ready, steady, go. Here we go. Bangladesh doesn't have so much money, but they still improve child health very good. They are falling very fast here. Sweden doesn't have a chance, and their score 4.7%. They made it. They were even faster than Millennium Development Goal. And this is a country which many is known. They have such a high corruption. They're on the top of the corruption list. You tend to poorer countries you just know bad things about. Give Sweden a second chance. They race against Egypt. 1916 Sweden is like Egypt 1990. Here we go. You can see Egypt just have a little worse economy, but they're also doing better. They provide cleaner water, basic health care, and they beat Sweden, 5.5%. At this point, people used to protest and say, this is not just. because at this time Sweden didn't have penicillin, there were no vaccines. And this is right. We have techniques, we have knowledge about breastfeeding today, which should make it possible to reduce child mortality faster. And so many countries are doing. Let's test another one. Brazil. Brazil, 1990, was richer than Sweden, 1932. Brazil is a country of great inequity. Some people are very rich in Brazil, some are very poor. And they had the same child mortality as Sweden, 1932. Ready, steady, go. Here we go. Brazil is richer, Sweden is catching up in economy, but they can't follow the speed of reduction of child mortality in Brazil. It has really been amazing, 6.3% per year. Very fast reduction. This is not known. Brazil is known for its inequity. And that is true. It is inequity and social injustice. But still, every child is now getting access to primary health care and vaccination in a much better way than it was in the past. 1948, when I was born, Sweden was there. And I let it race finally against the marshland on the equator. The most tropical of all countries, Singapore. Which was full of malaria at that time, which had suffered the Japanese occupation. Sweden should win this one. Singapore shouldn't have a chance, but they get away with the malaria. They get independence. They start economic growth. They catch up with Sweden. They do social investment. Sweden gets really, really worried. And here they come, Singapore, and they even make modern hospitals, and they win. They have the lowest child mortality in the world today. It's quite amazing what they have done. Sweden had an average rate of reduction of 3.6%. It never reached the Millennium Development Goal. We are setting targets for the developing countries today which we have never fulfilled ourselves. Let's be a little humble when we criticize countries who doesn't fulfill what we have never done ourselves. And of course it should go faster. These targets are not unrealistic. They can be achieved because it's not just any exceptional country I'm showing you. Look here, all these green countries are going faster than 4.3% the last 16 years. These yellow countries are almost making it. They are between 2, 3, or 4%. The problem is that we have a number of countries here with very low income that does not reduce child mortality. They have war, they have backlash with HIV, they have terrible malaria situations. That is the problem. Then we have a North Korea or some other countries for political reasons which are doing very bad in the center. But the problem is that the few countries which are poorest, that's why we don't see the improvement. But I'll give you a nice example here. It's Tanzania. Tanzania, child mortality since 1990, it did not improve until 1995. No reduction, bad years. And this was the improvement, 10% reduction per year, because it doubled the health budget from the government. They gave more money to health. They have economic growth now. And we got immunization, we got bed nets out against malaria. So we have a real positive situation. And we can say instead of this, less children are dying, and aid does contribute.